I was a senior engineer for more than 8 years before I was promoted to the principal level at Amazon. Looking back on my journey, there are a number of things I wish someone had told me that would have significantly cut down on my time to promotion. I think I lost a good 3 to 4 years. I looked for a ton of advice with mentors and books and on the internet. Some of it helped, but in retrospect, there were a lot of things that were missing. In this video, I'll reveal to you my hard-earned lessons on how you can land your promotion to staff or principal engineer in less time. For free. Meta here. I'm a principal engineer at Amazon, and I have 15 years of experience as a software engineer. I've done over 850 tech interviews, I'm an Amazon bar raiser, and I've trained hundreds of tech interviewers. I've also contributed to dozens of promotion documents, and I've been promoted through all levels of software development engineer. As always, you can disagree with my advice, but you can't say I don't know what I'm talking about. First, some definitions. For the purposes of this video, I'll use the term staff and principal engineer interchangeably, since the industry uses both terms. Some places define a principal engineer as a high-performing senior. In this video, the definition of a staff or principal engineer is a tech leader whose scope cuts across several development teams. A staff or principal engineer is someone whose technical influence affects somewhere on the order of 50 to 150 engineers. From my estimation, staff and principal engineers account for the top 1 to 2% of all software engineers at FAANG companies. First secret. Not every organization has scope for another principal engineer. There may be folks already inhabiting that position. For example, if you work at a startup, the CTO may be the de facto staff engineer. If you work at a larger company, there may be one or many principal engineers already there assigned to your team to provide coverage. It's going to be really difficult, if not impossible, to get promoted to staff if your organization doesn't need a staff engineer. Suppose there are 2 dev teams working on a project and things are going just fine. The natural carrying capacity for this setup may be 1 to 3 senior engineers and 0 principal engineers. So if you find yourself in a position where a principal engineer is not necessary, but it's important for you to be promoted, you should take a long, hard look as to whether you're in the right place. You don't want to be in a position where the only way you can be promoted is if someone leaves or your team takes on more scope. In both cases, you are depending on something that you have no control over. This is your life. If it's important to you, don't wait for others to change. Go and get it. I created this channel as a way to support the community of career software developers. Most content on YouTube is for people trying to break into the industry. My content is centered around what you do now that you are a software developer. Drop a like and subscribe if this type of content is useful. I've also been batting around the idea of doing office hours on Twitch or YouTube Live. If you'd like to see that or want me to make videos on other topics, leave a comment below. Second secret. Software development managers have no problems telling you there is principal level scope on their team, even if there isn't. The reason is because almost every team that needs more people has room for talented and experienced senior engineers. It's really hard to find talented engineers, much less talented senior engineers. I've talked to many folks who have told me stories about how there are a lot of principal engineer level projects on a new team to entice them to join. But after some big deliveries, no promotion was forthcoming. What gives? Are the dev managers just lying out of their face? Not necessarily. There are 2 reasons things might not pan out. The first is that people conflate being critical to a project with having outsized impact. While it might take many people to deliver a big project, and you may have been a critical piece of this delivery, that's not enough to demonstrate resounding impact. The trap folks fall into when describing their contribution is to imagine what it would be like if they were absent from the project with no replacement. The reality, though, is if you weren't there, someone else would be, or they would make do without you. So being a contributor to a big project is not enough. There's a stat in baseball called wins above replacement, which attempts to calculate how many excess wins a player represents. So instead of talking about how many losses a team would have without a second baseman, you want to demonstrate you're an all-star with evidence that your wins over an average replacement is high. The second reason promises of a promotion after a project is delivered don't pan out is that being a really good senior engineer is a necessary but not sufficient condition for promotion to principal. Principal engineers must demonstrate engineering influence across several teams and dozens of engineers. So suppose you're a really strong senior dev on your team. You won't get promoted unless you demonstrate cross-team impact. You can't show you're a top 1% engineer if your impact is limited to a team of 10. The last secret is that your manager has an outsized role in your promotion. In a perfect world, your strong performance alone would be sufficient, but this isn't the case. Who your manager is and what scope they have is unfortunately a critical part of being promoted. You need 3 things from a manager. 1. They manage more than one dev team. 2. They have a history of promoting someone to principal or staff engineer. And 3. They are 100% committed to getting you promoted. If your manager directly manages just one dev team, it's going to be very difficult for them to make a case that you're operating at the principal level. The best they can do is make a case that you're a really strong senior engineer. The reality is that principal engineers simply don't report to frontline managers. If you're reporting to a frontline manager and you want to be promoted to a staff engineer, you should push for reporting to your skip level manager. You want to report to a manager that has experience promoting folks to principal. Sometimes managers will say something to the effect of, "I haven't ever promoted anybody to principal, but I want you to be the first." While this may be compelling, because it's nice to have someone committed to your personal growth, what you're effectively doing is tying your promotion to someone without experience. Just like in software, you want to minimize your dependencies, and if you have to take a dependency, you want to take the most solid one. Making your promotion contingent on someone else developing a skill is not a smart move. Finally, you want to make sure your manager is your biggest cheerleader. If you've been reporting to them for more than a couple of years, they should be giving you the highest performance ratings for folks at your level. When you ask for more scope and visibility, they should give it to you. When the best projects come along, you should be the first person they think about to lead it. If they've been dangling a promotion in front of you for a while, but you aren't getting the highest performance reviews, the best projects with the most visibility go to others, and your promotion seems to have stalled, it might make sense to start looking for better managerial support. Okay, let's bring it all together. If you want to be promoted to staff or principal engineer, and you want to take things into your own hands and not rely on luck, you want to be in a spot where there's a need for a principal engineer, but nobody is inhabiting that position. You want to report to a manager that has cross-team visibility and scope and has promoted a principal engineer before. You should have a good relationship with them, and they should be 100% in your corner. You want to demonstrate you are an all-star senior developer, not as defined by terrible things that would have happened if you were not there, but by how much better you are than the average. Once you've delivered some top-notch work for your team, you need to work with your manager to plan out how you can demonstrate cross-team impact with high visibility. If this describes you and your situation, you're in a good place. If not, and your promotion to principal engineer is important to you, I highly recommend looking to move teams or even moving to a different company, because it's unlikely you will be promoted in a timely manner. It took me several years to find these conditions naturally. Don't get me wrong, I don't consider these years wasted by any stretch, but the reality is that I'm not much stronger of an engineer than I was 4 years ago. The only thing I really wish to change about my past is my title, not my experiences. I hope that your promotion to principal engineer comes when you're ready and not when you are lucky. If you found this content useful, please hit that like and subscribe button. If there's content you'd like to see me make, please leave a comment. Otherwise, I'll see you next time.